morning. I had the opportunity to accompany my academic coach to a 2-day training on why poverty matters, and I've been asked to share a few highlights with you of the training. If you're like me, when you think of poverty, you immediately think of financial poverty, people living below the income level as determined by the census. Poverty is the extent to which an individual does without resources that helps one to be successful. This includes financial, support and role models, spiritual, physical, emotional, and cognitive. Did you know that children living in poverty are more likely to fall behind, be assigned to lower tracks in education, be retained, be labeled, drop out, and score lower on standardized tests? There's been a lot of brain research and meta-analysis conducted to help us better understand why poverty matters and the connection to learning. I want you to picture a graph right now, and on this graph there is a line with student achievement on the left side of the graph and the student IQ across the bottom. One would think that as the IQ level increased, so would the achievement level, and that is correct. But what about all the students in this meta-analysis that were above or below that IQ line? You know, the overachievers or the underperforming students. So that meant that there was more to it than just the IQ. That entertained the question of what matters most. And according to this meta-analysis and study, the number one indicator of student success was effort, self-discipline, and hard work. Number two was people skills, social emotional skills, and number three was the IQ. So allow me to just break this down for you for a minute. We all know that it is all about relationships. That's nothing new for us. Let's consider how stress may tie into effort. We all have stress in our lives, and we know that there is a chemical response in our body when stress is present. There are 3 levels of response to stress: positive, brief increases in heart rate, mild elevations in stress hormones, and we have available resources. Tolerable stress is buffered by supportive relationships and resources. This is the level of stress that I imagine most of us deal in. In other words, we have stress, but we have resources and a support system to help us deal with it. An example would be is if we had a flat tire, we have the resources and the means to get it fixed. What about toxic stress? Prolonged periods without protective relationships and resources. I tend to think about adults, but let's consider children. They may live in toxic stress environments at home and school. These hits are repeated, and they affect their attention, their focus, concentration, memory, social judgment, health, IQ, and attendance. That brings me to people skills. Our brain is hardwired for certain emotions: sadness, joy, disgust, anger, surprise, and fear. What I found most interesting in this training is that there is a set of soft skills that have to be taught to children. These include humility, forgiveness, empathy, optimism, compassion, sympathy, patience, shame, cooperation, and gratitude. I have to admit that I have been guilty to assume that because I tried to teach my own children these soft skills, that everyone else did as well. That's not always the case, and that may be why some teachers get frustrated when children refuse to apologize or give forgiveness, or show empathy towards classmates. The IQ is third on the list of what matters most, and I learned that contrary to what I had previously learned, the brain is changing every second for as long as we live. Research supports that our brains change structurally. They're changed with the blood and the chemicals and that affect our brain, and our brain has the ability to stretch. What does all this mean to us? Building relationships is still the most important thing that we can do with our students and families. We must create a caring environment, and most importantly, we must give our students hope. We must believe that they can do it, and they must believe that they can be successful. They must have a sense of belonging in our school community. My academic coach, Tracy Madison, and I are looking forward to sharing all of the things that we learned at this training at a faculty meeting, and we also plan to share this with the other staff members at our school that work at Pride Elementary. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. Thank you again for allowing the principals to go to the Why Poverty Matters workshop with our coaches. This is my 18th year with Volusia County Schools, and 14 of those have been at high poverty schools or high low income schools, and I had not ever attended one of those. So I actually learned a lot, but part of why I was so glad I went was a lot of what I heard was very reaffirming to me about what we're doing here at Galaxy, because our motto is every student, every period, every day. And we fight for our kids, every student, every period, every day. But what was really interesting was a lot of the brain research that I had not been exposed to before and how that affects students from poverty. What I've done already is I brought back that information, and I was very excited about having gone to that 2-day workshop, and I already shared that with my administrators and some of it with my leadership team, but not yet all of it. And then from there, we're going to make a plan where we're going to go and share it through PLCs. We're fortunate to have common planning here, so we have grade level PLCs every Tuesday, and I want to bring that information into those PLCs and open that discussion with teachers, because a lot of what we felt we learned, and I was there with all 3 of my coaches, that it's a change of heart and mindset. We have such high expectations for our kids, and that's wonderful, but sometimes we might be too rigid in what we're expecting, and we don't always have the heart behind it or have the understanding of what these kids are going through when they're not with us. And that's not to let them off the hook or make excuses, but to be able to support them better and help them with their academic growth.
Hi, I wanted to share a little bit about what we learned from the training a couple weeks ago. The biggest takeaway for me was just how poverty does affect the brain, more than I realized, and that the brain isn't set in stone, as many educators led us to believe years ago in research, and saying that IQ was set at 3 and there was nothing we can do, and that the brain really can change every single day. I think that the most important piece is that as teachers and as educators, that we know that we help shape those brains and that we can help grow them and reach them to their fullest potential. I also know that we learned a lot about dopamine, and getting those brain breaks and exercise and recess in the morning to get those bodies up and ready for learning is important. I also learned a little bit about the importance of status, and I never thought about that, and I think we can all think about some of our families that we see that are struggling to make ends meet, but yet they have that cell phone or those important shoes, and that's because it's important to them and it gives students status. The presenter Tammy talked about all she wanted was to be able to find a pencil with her name on it, or a cup, or anything that just said that Tammy was important, and she could never find one. And it was interesting because the next day at the conference, one of the academic coaches from another school had something made with their name on it. When students can see their names, it makes things more important. If they can see their name in a word problem, or hear it in a story, or they see their name on the wall with a class job, it gives them immediate status and belonging. I know a lot of the brain and what we learned about with poverty is that we have all those children that can come to school and they're hangry, they're hungry, they're angry, and those basic needs haven't been taken care of. And so we as educators need to learn, what can we do, what things can we put into place at our schools so that we can meet those needs, so that once a student has those needs taken care of, they can be ready to learn. I also learned something about, and I'm going to look down at my notes because I can't remember her name. It was Amy Cuddy and a research on the brain and posture, and they talked about the power pose. And so that's going to be one of the things that we take into testing season, because we know that we're all getting ready for that. Our leadership team met last week and we looked at what testing was going to look like over the course of several weeks. And so we are going to make testing fun and as positive as we can. And so we're going to have a theme, we're going to make testing exciting, and we're going to emphasize the fact that every student can reach their potential. And that goes down to the next piece of building those relationships. And a lot of what we learned over the course of these 2 days talked about building relationships, those soft skills, and making sure that our students know that we love them and that we're going to push them hard to be able to reach their fullest potential. And I know that students need to be able to communicate with us in a way that's comfortable for them when they are struggling, and brain sweat is real. So they gave examples of things that I know many of you have already seen: red cups, green cups, yellow cups. She showed an example of paint chips and how red, yellow, green, and it's just something a little bit small to show, hey, I'm really struggling with this work, I need help, or hey, I am rocking this and I can go teach somebody else. A lot of what we're going to do, because it was so much valuable information, is just really sprinkle it through faculty meetings, PLC meetings. A lot of it can be done coaching during our VSET observation cycles. And a lot of what we learned has tied in nicely to the work that we've done with Responsive Classroom and building those relationships, not just in our classrooms, but school-wide, and also knowing the power of our words and how important that can be. When we talked as a leadership team, we talked about success criteria, and last week we shared that with our district, our school ERPL, excuse me, a lot of ERPLs lately, and just getting students to know what they need to be able to move on to the next level. I think that one of the biggest things I saw is the research shared that there was nearly a 2-to-1 advantage of environment over genetics, and we know that teachers are the environment. We're with these children the better part of their waking hours of the day, and so poverty matters, and what it does affect the brain. But if we can put things in place in our schools and in our classrooms and in our school community, we can take our students to the next level. And that really, poverty matters, but that the teacher matters more. And they ended it with a familiar picture of a 6-year-old, and it had a picture of a little girl, and she said, "My teacher thought I was smarter than I was, so I was." And so it really just challenges us to remember that every single child in our buildings can be pushed, can be loved, and can be given high expectations so that they can learn more and more every day. So it was a great 2 days, and I think it's going to take us a year to fit everything in, but I think that it's something that can be meaningful and impactful in all of our schools.
I'm so excited that I was able to attend the conference. I learned an amazing amount of strategies that I could bring back to the school. The brain research was just awesome. Things that we think of every day, but we don't think of how to apply them within our classrooms. The good blood flow that goes to the brain gym activities, music, having the 60 beats per minute. All of these things that just, research shows, and it was all in one. So I felt like when I walked away from the 2 days at the conference that I just had kind of a toolbox or a tool set of things that I could bring back to my campus. Some of the things we are doing and implementing are the exercise piece. Next month I plan on having Coach Albright, one of our PE coaches that's been here for a very long time. She's going to present to our faculty and staff during a faculty meeting on all the positive things that exercise can do. And we're going to actually teach the teachers some of the things that they use in PE, the brain gym, the yoga poses, all of the things that, music, the things that we can incorporate within our classroom setting before testing, before we're going to take a test, or we call them celebrations in some of our classrooms here. We're going to teach the teachers these things that they can do within their classrooms, hopefully to help the students be a little bit more positive, confident, and effective when they take their test. We love the power pose. I've shared that with a couple of my classes already with small groups. Our ESC teachers in our support facilitation classes have already tried it, and the kids laughed and giggled at first, but it was an awesome thing to teach the kids. And some of my teachers are already showing like, wow, my kids are showing more confidence, and they're just feeling better about their own learning. Here at McGinnis, I feel like some of my kids, they're so meek and mild as a population, and they really need that confidence booster. And that's one thing that I definitely brought back immediately and implemented, and it's really worked.